Colorado's trailhead vanishing. The hiker who stepped off the path and was never seen again. Colorado. The morning started calmly in the Colorado mountains. The kind of quiet that hikers describe as peaceful but strangely empty. The air was cool, the trail was dry, and several people arriving early said the forest felt too still, as if waiting for something. The missing hiker signed his name in the trail log just before 9 a.m., smiled at another group passing by, and began his usual route. Nothing about his behavior seemed unusual. He walked with confidence, carrying light gear and moving at an easy pace. Witnesses later reported one detail that never left investigators. Halfway up the first stretch, the hiker paused and looked toward the tree line as if he heard something. Not alarming, just enough to catch his attention. A woman behind him said he stepped off the main path, as if he dropped something or saw something on the ground. But he didn't bend down. He didn't search. He simply stepped off the trail and walked out of sight behind a cluster of pines. That was the last confirmed moment anyone saw him. Minutes later, the woman reached the same spot. She expected to see him adjusting his gear or rejoining the trail, but there was nothing. No movement, no rustling branches, no footsteps continuing into the woods. It was as if the forest swallowed the sound around her. She called out once, then twice. No answer. The silence, she said, didn't feel natural, like the whole area had gone quiet at the same time. When search teams arrived hours later, they found the strangest detail of all. The ground was undisturbed. No footprints leading deeper into the forest. No drag marks. No broken branches. The dirt showed only the woman's own shoes and the clear marks from the main trail. And yet, he had stepped off it. Everyone saw it. By evening, the first wave of rescuers spread out across the hillside. They expected to find signs quickly. A water bottle, a map, a broken twig, something. But as the sun disappeared behind the ridge, one volunteer radioed in with a chilling update. "There's nothing here. It's like he was never on this mountain at all." By sunrise the next morning, more than 50 volunteers, park rangers and trained search and rescue teams were covering the mountain. The first grid sweep focused on the area where the hiker stepped off the trail, a small cluster of pine trees with open ground between them. It should have been impossible for someone to move through that space without leaving prints or brushing branches aside. Yet the clearing looked untouched. Rangers described it as perfectly still soil, the kind that should hold every step clearly. Dogs were brought in next. These were experienced search dogs, trained to follow even the faintest human scent. But the moment they reached the tree line, something unusual happened. Instead of tracking a direction, the dogs circled once, sat down, and refused to move. Their handlers later said they had nowhere to go. The scent did not lead forward, backward, or deeper into the forest. It simply ended. Witness reports from that morning added even more confusion. A pair of hikers said they heard a single shout at dawn, distant, sharp, and echoing across the ridge. They pointed rescuers toward the sound, but when teams climbed the slope, they found no tracks and no elevated view where someone could have stood. The echo didn't match the terrain. Rangers marked the report as credible but unexplained. The hiker's family arrived shortly after noon. They were shown the trail and the exact point where he stepped off. His brother stared at the pine trees for a long time before saying, "He wouldn't go in there. He hates thick woods." Searchers agreed. The area wasn't dense, but it was unlikely he'd wander inward without a reason. By late afternoon, rescuers began expanding the search to higher elevations, checking cliffs, runoff channels, and old mining paths. But every new direction led to the same result. No scent, no prints, no belongings, no sound. As daylight faded again, a cold wind moved across the mountain, and radios crackled as teams regrouped. One ranger summarized the day's findings in a single sentence that unsettled everyone. "We have a start point, but no trail to follow. On the third day, search teams widened the perimeter again, pushing nearly 5 miles beyond the trailhead. This was standard procedure for lost hikers, but the ground still showed no real sign that he had traveled anywhere. Then, just after noon, a volunteer spotted something that briefly lifted everyone's hopes. A small piece of fabric caught on a low branch. It looked torn, and the color was close to the missing hiker's jacket. Rangers rushed to examine it, but within minutes, that hope collapsed. The fabric belonged to a previous rescue training exercise held in the park months earlier. It had nothing to do with the missing man. The false lead hit the team hard. One ranger admitted, "We're running out of things to chase." Later that afternoon, a new report came in from a group of campers on the opposite side of the ridge. They claimed they heard footsteps circling their campsite the night before. Slow, deliberate steps, as if someone were walking just outside the range of their lantern. When they looked out, they saw no one. The sound moved in a perfect loop and then stopped. The timing matched the hours when searchers had paused operations. Investigators checked the area carefully, but again, found nothing. No tracks, no disturbed pine needles, no discarded gear. One officer described it as hearing a person we could never prove existed. As search days stretched into search nights, fatigue began affecting everyone. Rangers reported the forest feeling unusually quiet. Not dangerous, but strangely empty. As if wildlife had withdrawn deeper into the mountains. Birds that normally chirped at dawn were silent. Even the wind seemed to move differently, rolling through the trees in short bursts instead of steady gusts. The hiker's family stayed near the command post, refusing to leave. His mother repeated the same question to anyone who would listen. How can someone vanish after taking one step? One step. No one had an answer. And on the evening of the third day, a new worry settled over the team. If he wasn't found soon, weather would turn against them. The mountain was changing, and not in their favor. By the fourth morning, the weather had shifted. A cold front rolled in from the west, bringing low clouds that pressed down onto the ridgeline like a ceiling. Visibility dropped, and the air felt heavier, making radio communication crackle with static. Rangers knew this was the point when most search efforts begin to lose momentum. Not because people stop looking, but because the mountain starts deciding what can and cannot be found. Teams returned to the starting zone one more time, hoping they missed something simple, something human. They rechecked the logbook, remeasured footprints, and interviewed every witness for the fourth or fifth time. The woman who last saw him said her memory was still clear. He stepped off the path like he was expecting something to be there. That detail bothered investigators. What was he looking at? Around midday, a faint signal appeared on one of the hiker's emergency contacts. Not a call, but a short, incomplete ping from his phone. It registered for less than a second before disappearing. The location estimate covered nearly 2 miles of rough terrain, making it unclear whether the signal was old, bouncing, or triggered by shifting weather. Still, it was the first digital sign of him since he vanished. Searchers rushed to the new zone, climbing over rocks and fallen trees as temperatures dropped. But the terrain worked against them. Loose soil crumbled under their boots, and patches of fog made it hard to see more than a few yards ahead. They found nothing. No clothing, no device, not even a disturbed patch of ground. The ping, like everything else, led nowhere. That evening, as teams regrouped, several rescuers described hearing something unsettling on the mountain. A faint, distant sound that resembled a voice. Not a shout for help, but a single low call carried by the wind. Every time they tried to follow it, the echo bounced in a different direction. The lead ranger wrote in his report, "Could be wind, could be nothing," but it made everyone stop moving. Morale began to slip. Hope was thinning, but the search wasn't over. Not yet. On the fifth day, the search expanded farther than anyone expected. Dozens of new volunteers arrived, some driving in from neighboring counties after hearing news reports. Helicopters scanned the slopes again, using thermal imaging that could detect even small heat differences on the ground. Still, the screens showed only the natural shapes of rock, trees, and empty space. The hiker's signature never appeared. By afternoon, the weather took another turn. A sharp wind swept across the ridge, carrying dust and pine needles into the air. Rangers warned that one more storm would make the area too risky for volunteers. Slippery ground, falling branches, and low visibility had already caused several close calls. Search leaders met with the family and explained what everyone feared. Large-scale operations could not continue safely. That conversation marked the beginning of the end. Before wrapping up, teams completed one last sweep along the main trail. They walked slowly, silently, hoping for anything. A dropped item, a piece of clothing, even a single footprint they might have overlooked. But the path looked exactly as it did on day one. Undisturbed, quiet, as if the mountain refused to give anything back. That evening, at the command post, the ranger captain read the final statement out loud. Active search suspended. Investigation ongoing. The family cried quietly. Some volunteers stood with them, unwilling to leave. Others stared at the mountain, trying to understand how a person could step off a trail in plain view of witnesses and disappear without a trace, without noise, without direction. In the weeks that followed, smaller teams returned on their own time, hiking new routes and checking old mining shafts. Nothing was ever found. Not his clothing, not his backpack, not his phone. His disappearance became one more entry in Colorado's long list of unresolved wilderness cases. Cases where timelines break, footprints stop abruptly, and last sightings make no sense. Locals still talk about the moment he paused on the trail, turned his head, and stepped toward the trees. One step. That was all it took. And to this day, the mountain has never answered what happened next.